So in this tutorial I will be trying to help you how to drive better in Gran Turismo 4. I will go in depth in some analysis of the laps, how you can make your lines better or how to defend yourself. So let's move to the video. I decided to divide this video into 3 different parts, which are gonna be 1. In general, how to understand the car in GT4. 2. How to choose a proper line and make the most out of it. And 3. How to overtake and defend yourself from the attack. The first thing you gotta understand about GT4 is that the game isn't nearby any sim racing game. Therefore, if you played any of these before, you must change some of your habits. The best example will be tail braking, which in most games, it's the key to driving fast. In GT4, on the other hand, it's not really useful or efficient. To prove the point, let's analyze the following situation. Me and Daniel are getting closer to the chicane, and there is not much time to react, so I know I have to overtake him from the inside. But first, watch the entire clip. Okay, let's see what happened. First thing that you probably noticed is that I'm going fully on brake, and I'm gonna keep the brake till I'm reaching the speed that I'm intending to take the corner with. As soon as I start turning right, I start releasing brake and apply throttle for the optimal speed. I am going fully on brake again to avoid overshooting the corner, as well as I wanna keep the optimal speed for the best exit possible. Since I reduced my speed enough, I can do the full throttle flat out to the corner. As you could see on the following clip, the overtake was pretty risky, but it definitely paid off since I gained 0.3 of the advantage and I got pretty decent exit and I could continue battling from the P1. You could also notice how close I was to the walls on entry and exit. The main purpose was to use as much track as possible for the maximum speed. GT4 is pretty tricky since the cars tend to understeer quite a lot. For that reason, it will be difficult for you to feel the dimensions of the car, but once you drive a little bit more, you will get used to it and you will be able to drive as close to the walls as me. Speaking of the understeer, it looks kind of tricky, but once you get used to it, you might actually use it on your advantage, which I'm gonna be explaining later on how to do that. For now, let's come back to the car's dimensions and let's explain why it's so important to understand. So here we have a clip of me driving on a Monaco, probably one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult track in the entire game. I am about to make a pretty decent lap and I wanna analyze some parts of it to help you understand why it's so important to understand your car's dimensions. So here you can see that I got as close as I could to the left wall, so I can get maximum of the track and I can turn to the right with the maximum speed. After that, I will make a turn to the right, it's gonna be a sharp one, and you gotta keep in mind that if you brake, you should always do it in one go. So it shouldn't be like, okay, I'm just gonna brake a little bit and then I'm gonna brake again. No, it should be just in one go for the maximum speed to not lose an extra time. Now let's see how it was done. You might be wondering why I braked again in the middle of the corner. So the reason was pretty simple. I needed some extra rotation to be able to take the corner even faster. This is one of the more advanced techniques which I'm gonna be explaining later in the video, but for now, just try to keep in mind that you should always brake in one go, and if possible, to do the flat out through the corners. Before I analyze this clip, please watch how this section was done by me. Okay, so let's see how it was done. You can see 2 things here. So first of them is that I'm not fully braking. Since my speed is low enough, I do not need to use the full pressure on a brake, so that allows me for a little bit more rotation. You can also see that I upshifted to 3rd gear. And you might be wondering why I did that. So the reason is pretty simple. I wanted more traction, I do not need that much of the rotation. I'm not gonna be wasting time on the upshift once I'm exiting the corner. Also, this car has enough torque to exit with decent speed. I am going to the left as much as I can, so I maximize the track limits so I can get wider entry to the corner. As you can see, the wider entry allowed me to do the corner with the full flat out. Here you can observe the similar situation of maximizing the track limits for the maximum speed. Also pay attention to my throttle and brake indicators. Again, the situation of maximizing track limits. With all of the correct lines, we've got a pretty decent time of 1.33.7, which I think is a pretty decent time for GT300. So you could see from the previous clip that there is not much required to actually obtain the quick laps, so to be completely honest with you, it's all about proper braking, adding full throttle on the exit as well as shifting properly and avoid understeering. Now I would like to analyze an example of bad lap, so you can understand the mistakes that usually people make. As we can see, the first corner, the braking point was pretty okay, but there was like so much braking, which should never happen. Also the gear should be third, since there was actually still some sort of wheels. It's really important to keep the higher gear in LMP and Group C cars. Here as you can see, the turn was done too early and the second gear was used, and I think it would be much quicker to use the third gear. In this corner my friend released throttle way too many times, which resulted in a huge understeer, and the entire track wasn't utilized to the maximum. Here the braking was done way too late, as well as the third gear wasn't used. This section was surely done better since the third gear was used, but you could definitely carry a little bit more speed on the exit. Here you could easily add a little bit of the brake and go full throttle, which would result much higher exit speed. 1:11.2 isn't that bad of the time. Now let's see how much of this time we can improve. Okay, here we are with my attempt, and as you can see, I'm going with the full speed. This turn is pretty tricky since I have to brake really late, and then I still have to brake again, because otherwise I will be too fast to take the corner with the full speed. I am going to the right for the track limit, and I'm not shifting down below third gear as you can see. The third gear allows me to carry out more speed, which results better exit speed. Here you can see I'm just using brake and throttle technique to just slow down a little bit. I'm not releasing the throttle to avoid understeer. This one was also done on the third gear, and full throttle at the exit. So you already know the drill. Slowing down, so we have slow entry, fast exit with full throttle. Again, I'm adding a little bit of the brake to make sure I fit in this corner, and I'm pretty much going to the end. 1.7.3 as our final time. I think it's pretty decent time. I could definitely do it much better, like sub 1:07 is possible, but it was just a showcase that if you apply proper line and braking, you can definitely get much better times. Now I would like to focus a little bit more on the overtakes. In general, you should always be trying to overtake on a straight road, since it's the safest way to do so. Here I'm trying to overtake Daniel on a straight road where it's pretty safe to do. Unfortunately, I lose the position due to worse line. On the next lap, I'm trying to execute the overtake. As you can see, I'm also upshifting so I do not waste time on the exit, and I'm easily overtaking Daniel, as well as I'm using his slipstream so I can gain more speed. Speaking of the defense, you usually wanna keep the gap closed on the inner side of the corner. Overtaking from inside is probably the most efficient way, but you also gotta be careful to not dive bomb someone, especially with GT4's netcode. In this clip I would like to show you how you can also overtake someone by switching sides with them. So as you can see in this corner, I am losing the little bit of the speed and Daniel is about to overtake me, but I will gain the position as soon as he overtakes me because I'm taking the inner line and I'm just switching. Okay, so what do we know for now? You should always go to the outside, and once you hit the apex you should be able to exit with full throttle. You should never release the throttle while taking the corner, otherwise you're gonna understeer. And try to overtake as much as possible on straight roads. Alright, so what else can we improve? I mentioned at the beginning that the understanding is the most important aspect of the game, so let's deep into that. Let's take a look on assists first. You should never be using ASM since it's gonna make you much slower, and in general this assist is just useless. You can compare it to some sort of stability control, which is definitely not needed in this game. I wanna talk a little bit more about traction control in this game. Since the wheel spin is quite unrealistic in this game, I would recommend using this one. However, some players claim that it's gonna make you slower in the corners, but I don't really feel the difference, so it's pretty much up to you. Personally, I think that the launch advantage that you get with DCS is pretty OP. The only situation where you shouldn't use the assist is when you drive a road car. Traction will prevent the rotation, so it's gonna make you a tiny bit slower. If you are about to drive LMP or Group C car, there's even no question, you need the traction control to be competitive. So to sum it up, if you drive a road car, do not use TCS. If you drive something like GT 500, it's pretty much up to you, it's not gonna make much of the difference, but in LMP Group C you must be using, to be even able to use the second gear without spinning. The gearbox, there is no question, just use manual, there is literally no reason to use AT. And lastly, tires. There is one thing that I have to warn you about. The tires are not the same in online mode and time trials. For example, GT 500s and LMPs will be using racing hards in time trial mode, where in online they will be using racing mediums like they do in career mode. So if you wanna practice for the online, you should be using cars from garage in your career mode, cause they use the same tires as you will be using in online races. In my opinion, the best way to practice is just by racing with other people. If you manage to observe how better drivers are driving, for example where they brake or how they take lines, you can learn quite a lot and try to apply it in your drive. Also, this clip is a good example of how some stupid mistakes can pretty much ruin the race for you. As you can see, two Mazdas are making this corner way too quick, which is gonna result the understeer cause the speed is too high. Those guys definitely lost around 2 or 3 seconds just by making a single mistake. So remember, it's always better to lose a tiny bit of time just by slowing down a bit more rather than losing the control over your car and losing like 3 seconds. I also mentioned that the netcode isn't the best. In this clip you will see the best example of it, and the message to all of you, just respect the fucking netcode so you avoid situations like that. And that's it for the video. I hope the guide was somehow helpful, as well as it made you a better driver. I'm currently working on something big, so expect the videos more often right now, as well as I'll be keeping my channel more updated. For now, see you next time!